Somewhere in Louisiana, right now, there's a black skillet sitting on a stove that's older than the person cooking on it. It doesn't shine, it isn't pretty, but if you ran your finger along the inside, it would feel like glass. That pan has fed a family through 3 generations, maybe 4. It came through hurricanes, a few moves, a couple of funerals, and every Sunday pot of gumbo in between. And here's the thing nobody in that family could really explain to you, because nobody ever bothered to write it down. Almost everything that made that pan work, the way it browned meat, the way food let go of it, the way it just never rusted, came down to a handful of tricks that Grandma simply knew. She didn't measure them, she didn't spell them out. She did them, every day, without thinking, until the day they died with her. So today we're going to write them down. 7 of them. The ones your Maw-Maw kept in her hands instead of on paper. Because that skillet on her stove was never valuable for what it'd fetch at an estate sale, though believe me, we'll get to that. It was valuable for everything that ever got made in it.
A word before we go on. If what you're about to watch is the kind of thing you'd want to keep, not 1 trick, but 50, each one written down the way Maw-Maw did it, in a voice that talks like home, there's a book. 50 Cajun cooking tricks Maw-Maw never wrote down. The roux she'd never walk away from. The trinity that starts every pot. The boucherie that fed a whole parish. The black iron nobody ever washed. 50 of them, laid out plain, none of it fussy, all of it real. The kind of knowing that used to die with the cook. The link's in the description and pinned at the top of the comments. Now then, let's get into it.
Trick 1 starts the way half the recipes in South Louisiana start. First, you make a roux. Equal parts flour and fat. Down here it's oil more than butter, because oil takes the heat further without burning. You set that heavy iron over medium-low, and then you stir. And you keep stirring. There is no shortcut, and there is no walking away. Over 20, 30, sometimes 45 minutes, that pale paste slowly turns. Blonde first, then the color of peanut butter, then a deep copper, the shade of an old penny for a chicken gumbo, and darker still, near chocolate, for seafood. The reason it's done in cast iron and not a thin pot is heat. The iron holds it low and spreads it even, with no hot spot to scorch the flour before the rest catches up. And here's the rule Grandma lived by and never once said out loud. The second you see a single black fleck, it's burnt, and burnt roux will ruin the entire pot. You throw it out and you start over. She didn't watch a clock, she watched the color, and she trusted her nose. That was the whole recipe. Trick 2. Before a single onion hits that pot, you brown your meat in it, and you never, ever scrape those stuck-on bits away. That dark crust welded to the bottom of the pan has a name. The Cajuns call it the gratin. The French call the reaction that makes it the Maillard reaction. Either way, it's pure concentrated flavor, and it's the backbone of the dish. So she'd season the meat first. A good tablespoon of Tony Chachare's or Slap Ya Mama per pound, rubbed in, then sear it hard on every side in the hot iron and build the whole pot right on top of those browned bits. Cast iron does this better than any other pan because of how much heat it holds. When cold meat hits a screaming hot skillet, the pan stays hot instead of dropping temperature, so you get a real sear instead of a sad gray steam. 1 pot, 1 layer of flavor stacked on the last. That's why a proper Cajun jambalaya or a smothered pork chop tastes like it simmered for days, even when it didn't. Trick 3 is the one that still starts arguments at family sinks to this day. Never wash it with soap. And here's the part nobody explains. Grandma was right. For her time. The soap she had in that kitchen was made with lye, and lye genuinely does strip seasoning off cast iron. So her rule was good, solid sense for the soap she actually owned. The trouble is, the rule outlived the soap. Modern dish soap doesn't work that way at all. The lye gets neutralized in the making, and today's mild detergents simply can't break the seasoning, because seasoning isn't grease sitting on top of the metal. We'll get to exactly what it is in a minute, but the short version is it's a hard, bonded layer, and a drop of Dawn on a well-kept pan won't touch it. So Grandma wasn't wrong. Her rule was just written for a soap that doesn't exist anymore. What still holds true, every bit as much as it did back then, don't soak it, and don't ever leave it sitting wet. Trick 4 is how she actually cleaned it, back before anybody said the word soap out loud. Coarse salt, while the pan was still warm from the stove. She'd pour in a good handful of coarse or kosher salt, add just a splash of water to work it into a paste, and scrub with a folded rag. The salt lifts the stuck-on food without cutting into the finish, and there's real physics under that. Salt is softer than both the iron and the hardened seasoning, so it scours the food off but slides right over the good surface underneath. Then a rinse under hot water, and here's the step that saved 1,000 skillets. She dried it on the fire. Straight back onto the burner for a minute until every last drop was gone. Because water is the one enemy cast iron truly has. Leave it wet and it rusts. Once it was bone dry, a quick wipe of oil while it was still warm, or in her kitchen, more likely a swipe of bacon grease or lard, and up on the hook it went. Clean, dry, protected, ready for tomorrow. Trick 5 is the why underneath everything else. That black surface? It isn't dirt and it isn't grease. It's armor. When you heat a thin layer of fat past its smoke point, the oil doesn't just dry out. It changes at the molecular level. The molecules break apart and relink into long chains, forming a hard, almost plastic-like film that bonds down into the tiny pores of the iron itself. Scientists call it polymerization, and it's chemically related to how plastic forms. Every single meal Grandma ever cooked laid down another invisible layer of it. That's the real reason a cast iron pan gets better the more it's used, and why the oldest ones look like polished black glass. That layer seals the iron off from rust, and it's exactly what lets a fried egg slide free. The part she never put into words. You don't protect a skillet by babying it or hiding it away. You protect it by cooking in it. A well-kept pan will outlive the person who owns it. 100 years is nothing to good iron. Trick 6 isn't a technique at all. It's the reason her old pan cooks better than almost anything you could buy today. Odds are Grandma's skillet was made before 1960 by a company like Griswold out of Erie, Pennsylvania, or Wagner out of Sydney, Ohio. Back in that era, after the iron was poured and cooled, workers ground and polished the cooking surface by hand until it came out smooth as glass. That was slow, expensive, skilled labor. Around the 1950s and 60s, to keep up with demand and a flood of cheaper imports, most foundries quietly dropped that finishing step. Griswold merged with its old rival Wagner in 1957, and production in Erie wound down and stopped by the end of the 1960s. That's the whole reason a brand new skillet off a store shelf today has that rough, pebbly, sandy feel to it, while Grandma's has that silky, machined smoothness. The old pans were also cast thinner and lighter, so they were kinder on the wrist and heated up faster. And it's why, today, a vintage Griswold that cost a few dollars brand new can sell for $100, $200, sometimes a great deal more. The pan on her stove might quietly be the single most valuable object in the whole house, but that, of course, was never once the point of it. Trick 7 is really two truths she lived by and never bothered to separate, and they're both about acid. Tomatoes, wine, a long, slow-simmered sauce picante. Acidic foods will slowly wear away at a young, thin seasoning. That part is real. So Grandma never set a tomato gravy to simmer for hours in a pan she'd just seasoned fresh. She reached for the old one, the armored one, the pot that had earned enough layers to take it. That's the trick hidden inside the trick. You match the dish to the age of the pan. But here's the other side of it, the part that's almost a gift. Cooking in cast iron, and acidic foods especially, actually puts a little iron back into your food. It's small, but it's measurable, and it's real. For generations of families cooking everything they ate in that one black pot, the skillet was quietly a source of iron in the diet, long before anybody had the science to name it. She didn't know the chemistry, she just knew, somehow, that the old pot was good for you. Turns out she was right about that too. So that's 7. The roux you never walk away from. The browned bits you never scrape off. The soap rule that was right in its own time. The salt, the fire, and the swipe of grease. The black that's armor and not dirt. The old iron that still beats the new. And the acid that gives and takes at the same time. None of it was ever written down, because for a long time it didn't need to be. It got passed hand to hand, over a hot stove, in a kitchen that smelled like onions and bay leaf and coffee. That's how this kind of knowing traveled through a family, not in a book, in a pan. And if there's a black skillet somewhere in your family right now, on a shelf, in a box, out in the shed, waiting, understand that it isn't waiting to be sold, it's waiting to be used. That's the only way any of this ever really stays alive.
Here's the thing about all this. When the cook goes, the knowing usually goes with her, and most of it never gets written down anywhere. That's the whole reason I put this book together, so it don't die twice. 50 Cajun cooking tricks. Maw-Maw never wrote down, 50 of them, laid out plain, the way she really did it. If you want to keep it, the link's in the description and pinned at the top of the comments. Now go pass a good time. I'll see you at the next pot.